just say me, please. Okay, so welcome to the Alliance Française again. Good night. Thank you to be there. I want to say the welcome to you, that you are here in the hall of the Alliance Française of Kuala Lumpur, but also to the public that is here online on the social media of the AFKL and of the Alliance Française of Penang. Tonight we celebrate la Nuit des Idées, a global event organized by the Alliance Française, French institutes and embassies. Indeed, it is a European night of ideas, as la Nuit des Idées, the night of ideas 2022, is marked by the French presidency of the Council of the European Union. So we just had a workshop with Orang Orang Drum Theatre a moment before, a company that will also present a performance in the garden of the Alliance Française just after the conference that we are going to present with our guests. Green spaces in urban areas, the importance of preserving natural landscapes in cities. This first conference of the year 2022 is part of a series of conferences about urban biodiversity, a key challenge for Southeast Asia in the 21st century. And we will present then four other conferences, five with the one of this night. We present the other conference during the months of March, May, September, and November. And we will talk about sustainable cities, about environmental justice, about health and biology, and finally about marine biodiversity. But now we will hear our guest of tonight, Rina, Omar, Ceelia, Leong, Eric, Olmedo, and to our moderator, Thary, Gazi, Go. So thank you and have a good event.
Hi everyone, very good evening to all of you. So tonight we have a very interesting talk, not just one talk, but three talks from three very accomplished guests. So we have Eric Omeda, who is going to talk to us about Ulam, which are the raw vegetables and herbs which people plant in their gardens traditionally. We have Rina Omar, who will be talking a bit about her experience with Free Tree Society and how their programs with planting within the city, as well as Ceelia Leong, who will be talking about this really interesting project by Think City about the effects of climate change and temperature within our cities. So without further ado, I'll invite Eric to begin his presentation.
Okay. I have the permission to remove my mask while I talk, so I'm going to do it. Can you hear me clearly? Yeah, okay. So hi everyone, my name is Eric. I'm French. And I work at the UKM, for the ones who know, it's the National University of Malaysia, within a small research institute called Institute of Ethnic Studies. Nothing to do with Ulam at first. I'm an anthropologist. But what we are doing, what we have been doing for a few years now, is to start this initiative called Ulam School. Do you guys know about Ulam? Have you heard about it? No. So, like Thary said, Ulam, if you look in the dictionary, French-English dictionary, you will find the translation, or Malay-English dictionary, you will find translation like salad. For me, it's a bit of a simplification, but what we could summarize it as is, I call it local regenerative edible flora. But it's very, it's also a kind of cultural heritage in Malaysia. It is more linked with the Malays ethnic group, as well as the Peranakan for the ones who know, and some also indigenous population like the Orang Asli in the peninsula. It's very often, but not only leafy vegetables, they're also not leafy vegetables, originally wild edible plants that you consume raw or slightly blanched. And in Malay culture, it serves with a dip. And the beauty about it is full of good nutrients, much better than all the imported so-called superfoods that you can find in your supermarkets, because there have been surveys about it. They have less, these imported greens, what we call macro greens, they have less nutrients than your local ulam. And so that's the beauty of it. They also have medicinal properties. I don't know if you guys read in the press recently, there was an article about this researcher from UKM, but he's from the health science faculty. He devised a medication based on Ulam Raja, one of the types of Ulam. And he did clinical essays, which have been validated scientifically. And he found out, and he got an award for it, that a regular consumption of Ulam, this particular Ulam Raja, reduces memory loss for aged people. So he got a very prestigious award for it. So there are many medicinal properties associated with the Ulam, certain types of Ulam. That's the second benefit of it. And the other benefit is that because they are local, if you consume Ulam, then you create a short supply chain. Therefore, it's better for the planet because less carbon print. You also keep the revenue for domestic economy instead of giving it to Australia or California, and then if you place order, if the supply chain goes to rural Malays or indigenous settlements, then there's also a kind of, I would say, social integration to some extent, because these indigenous communities, they will suddenly come up to the front stage, because in a sense they are the gatekeepers of the knowledge associated with Ulam, which for Malaysians from the city, because we are talking about the city environment as well today, they are disconnected from it, they have forgotten about it. And this is a part of the problems, because they have forgotten about the benefits of this Ulam, and they replace it with food coming from the industrialization era. Then that's where all your non-communicable disease, obesity, hypercholesterol, high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes start from. So it's a very humble green ulaman plural form, but it could change a lot of things. So our endeavor to this Ulam school is just a food education initiative to try to impart that knowledge and revitalize Ulam for Malaysian citizens, and especially Malaysian citizens who lives in the cities. That's for my part.
Oh, okay. You had 15 minutes, but I think you finished in 5.
Yeah, no, I think it's better that
we can do more discussion later. Yep. So I think I'll pass the floor to Rina now.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Your slides.
With my many slides for today. Good evening, everybody. And my name is Rina, and thank you so much for the introduction. And Eric, thank you for talking about one of the favorite things for me to eat, which is ulam, which we also grow. So I think the screen's already showing that, yeah? Okay, so greetings from Free Tree Society, which is where I work and spend most of my time right now. So we are an environmental organization, and what we do is we are probably one of the few organizations in Malaysia that gives Malaysians what they need to green our cities, which is free plants, the skills they need to nurture them, as well as sustainable living habits that we try to inculcate as well. So through our various programs and talks, and most of which are actually free and run almost daily. We've trained over 20,000 environmental stewards. And it's not an easy task, but we do it anyway. And we've given away, of course, true to our name, Free Tree Society, we've given away tens of thousands of free plants to homeowners, to schools, to community gardens, and even wildlife habitats, all with the goal of encouraging biodiversity and also promoting a love for nature. Next. So, when we first started out, it was back in 2013, and it was with a handful of volunteers who just set out to try to save this planet. No, they didn't try to save this planet. They said, let's start small. Let's plant some seeds, let's grow them into seedlings, and let's give them out as little baby plants to people to nurture and also to bond with nature through the act of gardening itself. Next. So that's how it started. Next. And of course, fast forward 9 years later to where we are today, and we have expanded somewhat. We now have a team of 6 people, which is very big for us, although only one is full-time, to handle countless volunteers in all our programs. So we're very much a knowledge and resource sharing organization. We produce all sorts of programs that includes running 2 nurseries, an outreach program for schools and kindergartens and universities, and also managing a small urban community forest as well. So I'm just going to go through very quickly the things that we do, starting with Bangsa Nursery, which I believe is on screen right now. So this is our office, and I love it because it's super green, but it's home to our flagship program. It's where it all began. So the program there is dedicated to try to train, a nation of environmental stewards, if we can. And our program involves talks on biodiversity, wildlife conservation. We also do talks on sustainable living skills like rainwater harvesting, composting and waste, as well as the climate emergency. And of course, we run all these hands-on planting workshops, which everybody really loves and enjoys. So the resulting plants that we grow in this nursery are given away as free plants, true to our name again, Free Tree Society. And also we have giveaway days where we give out these trees to members of the public. And plant care, of course, is very important for us. So we make sure people know, don't just take the free plant, but you got to grow it and let it live, okay? It's not just a free plant. Next. So our next nursery, is set in Taman Tugu, and that's a forest reserve right in the middle of KL. If you haven't been there already, please do go visit. It's absolutely wonderful. So this one focuses on reforestation and larger greening projects. And the only difference that the program there has with Bangsa Nursery is, of course, the plants that we focus on, which is local forest species, which is very important, of course. So there we give people a guided forest walk. We give them lessons in biodiversity and, of course, the importance of forests. Next. So we decided to expand a little bit more, and so the Pulai Trail program was born, and of course our moderator is very familiar with this because he and his team has helped us a lot. So it's set in an 18-acre urban forest that's located right next to, right behind our Bangsa Nursery, actually. So our mission here is to conserve one of, if not the last of, Federal Hills green zones. So we've undertaken trail development, we've done maintenance, we've introduced more than 500 native plant species in order to try to boost biodiversity, and of course, very valuable scientific research in order to help us regenerate the urban ecosystem there as well, which is what Thary's team has been helping us with as well. So the volunteers there learn not just about the value of forest, but they're actually actively taking part in trying to regenerate a forest in the middle of the city. Next. And then we have FTS on the go, and that is my personal baby because I work and take care of this program, and so it brings the experiences that you see us offer in all our other nurseries and programs in person, live, into kindergartens, schools, and universities for free. And we believe that education like this should be made free for all students everywhere, yeah? So it could be starting up an edible garden or giving a talk on climate change. We've got things for kids of any age, and it's wonderful. Of course, with the pandemic, we then launched FTS Online, which is basically the same thing, but over the Zoom screen, like I'm sure many of you have experienced as well. Next. And now, we have the latest addition to our roster of programs, which is Rewild Malaysia. And it's really related to what we're talking to today. The tagline is native plants for native wildlife. And basically, we're aiming to support local biodiversity from the ground up, again, by promoting the benefits and, of course, the wonders and the use of local plants. Next. So under the Rewild Malaysia program, of course, true to our name again, we are currently running this program and we're currently giving away indigenous plants to the public on a weekly basis. We're also running a series of online talks and workshops on topics related to rewilding and urban biodiversity. So that's really inspiring for us because that is why we're here. We have to remember we're sharing a space with other creatures as well, and that's where the base of rewilding is all about. Next. So when we talk about urban wildlife, usually the answer that we get is this. You'll see pigeons, rats, all this pests, and people say, oh, what a nuisance. But alongside with these animals that you see on screen right now, next, are also amazing creatures that you would not imagine to be in the Klang Valley. These are all animals that have been spotted in the Klang Valley. And it's hard to think, but yes, we have seen hornbills, we have seen otters, we have seen amazing snakes and reptiles, we've also seen bats as well. So there's so much to see and discover, even in your own backyard. Even all you have to do is just stop and look, and you'll see amazing things. Next. So wildlife diversity, biodiversity in urban areas are usually not the sexy ones like, the tapir, the sun bear, the Malayan tiger. They're much smaller. And these pictures that you see right now are actually taken in a little garden plot in the middle of the city. Just in one tiny garden plot, the size of a garden in a terrace house. So it's just a reminder that you could have a really small green space in your home, but it could be a place that can help support urban biodiversity. No matter how small, they all have a part in our ecosystem as well. Next. So in essence, what we're trying to talk about is mindful gardening, remembering that we share our spaces with other earthlings, and that our green spaces, again, no matter how small and where they are, have the capacity to be part of a bigger ecosystem, and we just have to do it by helping to support the life cycles of the animals and the little creatures around us. Next. So how do we carry out urban rewilding, you ask? Well, the fancy explanation that we have on our official documents will say this: from the grassroots upwards, connecting fragmented open spaces and home gardens to larger established green lungs using native plants and urban forest techniques, amplifying the impact of a collective green cover. Now, that sounds like a lot of big words together, so what I usually tell people when my boss is not looking, I say, it's basically turning your green spaces wherever you are into little corridors that help connect wildlife from one green area to another and being part of the bigger ecosystem around us. Be part of the bigger picture, and that's what rewilding is all about. Next. So we need to plant local. Of course, again, the push is to plant local plants. And native plants are essential for populations of insects that in turn will also support other creatures like amphibians, reptiles, birds, and so on. And of course, the fruits, the seeds, the nectars of local plants are, of course, more preferred by our local species as well, right? And from a gardener's perspective, they are easier to grow. They have a lot less problems. I mean, think about it. Native conditions, native plants, very easy to take care of, a lot less problems, right? And it creates a new appreciation for a landscape that you can create that is more uniquely Malaysian. And that includes, of course, putting in things that we and the animals can eat as well. Next. So this is something else I wanted to share, which is turning your backyards and your gardens into spaces that can also help give extra support to wildlife. So one of the ideas is, of course, to overturn broken flower pots into, a shelter for little animals, making wood piles or twig piles that you can tie up together and turn into little insect hotels. Now, we do this with children when we teach them about habitats, and it really changes the mind of children when they go back out into the gardens or go back out into the nature with this newfound awareness that, again, we are sharing our space with other creatures, and so we have to be there and support them in whatever way that we can as well. Peaceful coexistence. This is what we're trying to teach kids. And it's wonderful to see how kids' eyes just light up after they learn something as simple as that perhaps living in the city for many years will numb you at some point, right? Next. And of course, let's not forget the caterpillars. They all become beautiful butterflies and moths, but when you plant, consider not just flowers, but other plants that also help support in their different life cycles. For example, food for their larvae to feed on, yeah, like caterpillars. So don't worry if you have 1 or 2 caterpillars munching away on your plants. It will only become a problem if you have like 50 caterpillars and only 1 tiny little tree, in which case just come to us at Free Tree Society and we'll give you more trees to plant so you can share with the caterpillars as well. Next. So speaking of kill, because caterpillars don't really kill, they're eating for their life cycle as well. If you have pests in your garden, try to avoid pesticides that usually affect more different species of wildlife than the actual one you're trying to control. So at Free Tree, we try to go for more natural and more nature-friendly remedies, such as diluted wood vinegar, neem oil, so on and so forth. And also, if it's possible, try to consider biological controls. Like if you have a mosquito problem because of your water feature, you could add some fish in there, and the fish will eat the larva. Also, another thing is if you know of plants that can attract dragonflies, dragonflies are wonderful because they can actually eat up to 200 mosquitoes in one day. So imagine if you had a whole bunch of mosquitoes in your house. Let's get some dragonflies in as well. That's a great idea, right? All right, next. So these are pictures of some spaces that have been turned into or reimagined as greener spaces. And while these pictures are American, I think we can also try to imagine what it would look like if given on a Malaysian context as well. You know, there's too many times that we see vast open spaces in our cities that are flat, that are lifeless, that are just full of concrete. And if we were to just turn it into something and rewild these spaces, it can be transformed into habitats, not just for wildlife, but better habitats for us, human beings as well. Because it gives you a sense of being closer to nature, and that's something I think we all need, especially as inhabitants of the city as well. Next. Okay, so restoring native plants is not just about planting, it's about preserving existing native vegetation. So yes, we are trying to preserve forests, we're trying to preserve little green lungs and stuff like that, but within your areas as well, maybe next time don't mow the lawn so flat or clean. Maybe also think about just removing invasive species and allowing local species to thrive and become more species rich. So what we also try to tell people is try to leave your gardens a little bit wild. It actually helps. Next. So where do you rewild? It could be anywhere. That's the beauty of rewilding. It could be your garden, your balcony. It could be a school compound, your office compound. It could be a public space that's shared by everyone. It could be that little patch of grass that's right behind your house. Everywhere is a place that you could possibly rewild. You just need to open your eyes to the possibilities of rewilding. So now, think about your own green spaces. How much of it is actually native species, and how do you rewild? Next. So, for a place to support true diversity of life on a local scale, native plant species must represent at least 70% of the biomass in the landscape. Is it the charty thing already? Oh, okay, next, sorry. Okay, there we go. So 70% of the biomass in the landscape. So this is to help you get a better idea, okay? So biomass here means the total mass of plants within the given unit of environmental area. So because we can all play a part in supporting biodiversity wherever we are, which again is the beauty of rewilding, Free Tree Society, on behalf of them, I'm going to set a challenge for everybody here today. And your goal is to look back at your green spaces and try to see how you can achieve 70% native species biomass in your own little gardens and balconies. Next. And we call this our rewilding challenge. So when do you start rewilding? You could start tonight, you could start tomorrow, you could start as soon as possible. Well, what's important is to start. Look at your gardens, look at how many native species you have, and really, if you're not sure, it's as simple as picking up a phone and looking it up on Google. I mean, that's what I do most of the time. There are many plant ID apps out there that will assist you, so you could do that as well. And if you're really unsure and you don't know, I found that a great way to do it is also to take a picture and put it on Facebook or Twitter, and I guarantee you a plant nerd will respond. and they will tell you, yes, you can, and no, you cannot, okay? So please go out there and rewild. Next, please. So think long-term, think joined up, think natural processes, think climate resilience. Let's rewild together, everybody. One garden at a time, one balcony at a time. All right? Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Rina. That's really concise and really a lot to think about. So yeah, we'll be returning to that later with our Q&A session. But first, let us move on to our next speaker. So Ceelia, would you like to continue your talk on?
Thank you, Thary. I think with the Ulam speech and also rewilding, I'll keep it simple. Hi, everyone. I'm Ceelia from Think City. Think City is an organization, urban impact organization, and is a subsidiary of Khazanah. And Think City mission is to, make cities more people-friendly and resilient. Myself, I'm leading culture-based economic development, the director of the company. It's quite mouthful, means using culture as economic driver for local economy. But I'm also an urban data analyst, very passionate in this area, looking at data, how it can help cities to be better. And today I'm going to talk about the role of data in climate change. There are many evidence showing that the earth is heating up. There's a lot of natural disasters and so forth, as you can see from the year itself. And recently, even Klang Valley has been affected by a severe flood that has been totally unexpected. So in the face of these challenges, how do we know what's happening around us? So prior to the flood, what happened is in Think City, as part of our advocacy effort, we took some images, satellite images from NASA. It is like free and open source. And what we did was to process perhaps several decades of temperature of our atmosphere. And what happened is we see a really evident heating over several decades. And we did it for about 5 cities. It was major cities with a lot of population. Just to name a few, we did Kuala Lumpur City Centre, we did Ippo, and then we did Bayan Lepas, Johor Bahru, and then also Georgetown. And then after we analyzed, what is most important is to tell the story of what happened to this city, and then we published online. What we didn't expect is that it went viral, and it caught the attention of international and local media. So I'm just going to show a few. Basically, releasing data in a way that all people, including public, can actually put your address and then Google down and see how hot it is back in 1988 and now in 2019. So this is an example of Ippo. It is a very beautiful city, and it's nestled between 2 mountains. It's on a valley. And then this is in 1988. As you glide, I think you're gliding, huh? I can't see, so it's okay. As you glide, you can see that in 2019 has become, evidently more hotter. Although this is a snapshot of showing 2 timeline, but it can, you can feel that some areas, temperature has increased. And this is the case of Ippo. What I'm trying to describe here is called urban heat island effect. It is a phenomenon where the urban area city has become 2 to 8 degrees hotter than your surrounding area, which is the outside of the city area. And this happens when you replace your greenery landscape with material that retain heat. For example, concrete and asphalt. And this happens with the intensity of development. Basically, you have a built-up area. I've been once asked, do you think the culprit is industrialization or housing or road development? All of them contribute when you replace the green landscape with something very, very heat-retaining. And so that was in Ippo. And then we also did the same in Georgetown, which is an old city, very old city. And then we also saw that this, you're showing Kuala Lumpur, huh? Yeah? Georgetown, okay, sorry. So Georgetown is a very old city, but it's difficult to do greening. I mean, you basically don't see that many trees in the old city. And the materials are, containing heat as well. And that itself, over several decades, has heated up. So what we found from our 5 city studies was the highest temperature increase was 6.7, 5 was Ippo, and then followed by Georgetown and Bayan Lepas, which is around 6 degrees as well. And then Kuala Lumpur, to our surprise, it was a surprising finding. We were expecting Kuala Lumpur city centre to be extremely hot because of the development. But the city centre itself has retained some urban greening, which has become quite effective as coolant. For example, Taman Tugu, Botanical Garden, and even Bukit Nanas, eco-forest, and also around KLCC. Those surprisingly was able to maintain the temperature increase up to 1.6 degrees. Of course, with the urban development at the greater KL, as you go towards Gombak and Batu Caves, the development is even more, but this is only at the smaller area. But remember, greening is effective in a way to keep the area cool, but compounded by climate change, which is over time, even if your cool green area is keeping it cool, but with climate change, eventually the area do become hotter. So in the end, climate change impact, we will feel it. And my colleagues and ourselves, we were looking at some of the evidence, which is interesting, released by the UN. I will just put the name out there for some enthusiastic people. It's called IPCC, Interpanel Climate Change, the UN organization. They released that the 3 hottest area, or not 3 most impacted area in the world by 2050 impacted by climate change will be Southeast Asia, where we are. Second is Sub-Saharan Africa, and third is India. So therefore, the climate change, how can we survive climate change impacts? It is to adapt and survive. So apart from this evidence that we have released to, increase awareness, my colleagues and myself, we have also developed the climate adaptation program for urban areas. And the first of it, we did it is for Penang, for Georgetown and Bayan Lepas. And then we apply for this climate finance body. It's called Adaptation Fund, and we managed to obtain together with the Penang local government and also irrigation department, I have to name them to thank them, that we got like $10 million for over 5 years initiative. Is how important climate projects is. So what it does is how to introduce nature-based solution, which is the natural infrastructure back into urban areas. And planting trees to cool the temperatures, battling storm water, which is, you will have a phenomenon where they will say that we have never had before in 100 years, a massive, volume of water raining at the same time, and no amount of drains or drainage, will be able to flush it out, and therefore you have a severe flood. So we'll have flash floods more frequent and so forth. And also another one is the institutional capacity building, and also the 4th program we have is for vulnerable community, women, girls, homeless, people with the, of a lesser, I would say also the impoverished and so forth. We call them the vulnerable group. So we have that program to raise their awareness as well. So this is one of our initiatives. Another initiative is that now you hear a lot about urban greening, but believe it or not all 3 species will survive by 2050 because of the extreme heat. We also embark on, studying the climate 3 species that will survive and be resilient by then. So we have identified about 215 species for Malaysia, and that will be open up for the public and all experts as well. So these are some of our initiatives by Think City, and I think it aligns with today's topic, the green landscape and the importance of urban, a green landscape in the cities itself.
Okay, thanks a lot, Ceelia. So I guess now that we've heard from all the speakers, maybe we can have a bit of a discussion. Eric, since you had such a short talk, I think we should ask you a few more questions.
Yes. Please do.
So, you say that Ulam is part of Malaysian heritage, but right now it seems to be like a lot more harder to find Ulam anywhere. You can't go to a shop and find it sometimes. It's been replaced by cabbage and all sorts of other temperate vegetables, actually. So, can you tell us a bit more about this disappearance of Ulam and like what happened and what we could do to reverse that?
Okay. Yes, I think the question is really about access, and especially in the cities where we are today. Because, of course, if you tell a rural Malays, that you cannot find ulam everywhere, they will smile. But if in the city we do have a problem, and I think it connects with the concept that has been coined by urban sociologists in America. Everything starts in America. But in the US, in the field of urban sociology, they have this concept. They have two concepts, actually. They have one they call food deserts, not deserts and not sweets, food deserts, and healthy food deserts. So basically, food deserts, according to this American urban sociologist, is a place, is in a city or suburb, where there's no supermarket. So then, and most of the time, it's in the suburban areas, but poor suburbs of great cities in America. And there's one very famous example in Philadelphia, where they, in a district of Philadelphia, there's a community without supermarket. So if they want to access fresh food, I mean, they cannot. All what they have is little shops in the neighborhood that only propose processed food. And it's not a coincidence whether this particular district have very high rate of obesity and other non-communicable diseases. So now the second concept is healthy food desert, is whether you are in a city as well and you want to eat an apple, for example. I mean, if you drive 20 miles or more, you cannot find an apple. So all you can find is also processed food. So this is the American concept, but in Malaysia, we are not to that extreme, but we can already see some struggles for access of fresh local greens like ulam, because some of you, work at the Alliance Française, at the French Embassy, or their office is in Intermark, for example. Intermark, you go down, Jaya Grocer, beautiful food. But if you go to the vegetable section, I dare you to find ulam there. You'll find lettuce, you'll find rocket, you'll find iceberg lettuce, tomatoes, all imported and so on. Some is true, are local in the sense that they are cultivated in Genting Highlands, for example, but it's hydroponic agriculture, so not the best for nutrients. And they are not native or naturalized plants, Ulam, if you're lucky, once in a blue moon, you will find, not Ulam Raja, you'll be too lucky, but you'll find Daun Salom, or maybe a bit of Pattaya, that's about it. And if you want to, you want to have a snack during your office day, it's also very difficult to have a healthy snack. If you stop at a petrol station, processed food, If you take from the street, of course you can have some nasi campur here and there, but the food is rich, and all this rich food will give you the calories you need, but will not give you the nutrients you need. So it's what we call hidden hunger. Enough calories, not enough nutrients. And that's part of the problem in Malaysia, because latest statistics from WHO, 2020, cause of death in Malaysia alone, 73% of death, 73% come from non-communicable diseases. Type 2 diabetes. Type 2 diabetes, for the ones who may not know, is the one that is not genetic, that is related to lifestyle. Little exercise. Most Malaysians start exercising after 40 years old, when the problem already started, So type 2 diabetes, hypertension, blood pressure, because you eat too salty, you don't do any sports, to regulate not enough to metabolism. And I think this one is very impressive. 95% of Malaysian adults, the statistic date from 2015, have hypercholesterol problems. Maybe not super high cholesterol, but above the limit, 95% of adults, Malaysian adults. So you have all these statistics, but it's true that if there is an access problem, because if I want to eat healthy during my office day, I really have to strategize, because it's not available on the go here and there, you know. And unless I buy imported macro vegetables, which are not bad, but less nutrients than local plants, and it's much more expensive. So it's kind of a problem, and that's one the thing we need to address with the suppliers as well. I mean, there are two ways. Either you talk to big suppliers like Direct Grocer, for example, but then it's going to be a challenge because they say, yeah, but it doesn't sell. You know, so we have to make the Ulam glamorous, you know, charismatic, like kale, for example, or quinoa. That's one option. Or the option is to rely on what we call alternative food networks, direct short supply chain with organic producers and so on. Of course, it will take a bit more time, but that's an interesting option. That's what we are modestly trying to do with the Ulam school. But it's more challenging during a pandemic era, because we have started some work with Orang Asli communities, so they were very interested. But then because of the pandemic, then many of them retreated into the forest because they feel that's how they can protect themselves from the virus. So we have to wait a little bit. So these are the two options we can look forward to. And of course, the key is education, like we are all doing, or creating awareness, and having the kind of workshop you're doing, guys, you know, with kindergarten kids, primary school kids, and so on. And we are starting doing it. We will be starting in April. That's why I could not show you anything, because we have revamped our website totally. So we are going to have a new website together with the learning management system, which will be up and running early April. And we'll be starting a pilot run of short courses centered on Ulam for universities to start with. So that's the initiative we are trying to do. Yeah.
Sounds very interesting.
Yeah.
So one thing which I am aware of, like just now you talked a bit about petai, right? So usually when people think about vegetables, they think about small plants, that you harvest in a farm. But I'm aware that actually a lot of ulam can come from trees.
Can help, sorry?
There are a lot of ulam that are from trees.
Yes.
Could you give some examples of that?
Okay, I mean, yes, ulam is a very broad category. That's why I don't like the salad translation. They can be fruits like limo puro. They can be nuts even. For if you go to Sarawak, for example, they will include nuts and ferns into the ulam category, and it's also I like to think that it's not limited to Malaysia. It's because we are talking about Southeast Asia as well. I mean, ulam doesn't stop at the border. They just have different vernacular names when you cross the border. And I did a field work in. I'm answering your question. I did a field work in Vietnam because the whole ulam school story started with a grant from the Toyota Foundation in Japan. That's also interesting because to fund research about local ulam, we have to get the grant outside. And so it was a transnational grant. So we had Cambodia, Vietnam, and Malaysia. In Vietnam, I went for fieldwork in Mekong Delta, and there was this mango plum, they call it. And the most interesting was not the fruit. The fruit was very interesting, a lot of antioxidants, but the leaf of this plant, this plum garcinia, you take the leaf, and the local ethnic minorities, not the kin, not the Vietnamese majority, they infuse slowly the leaf. They do like a tea, and this tea as well carries the property of reducing your blood sugar. And but it's only the people living in Mekong Delta that knew about it, you know. So Ulam is very complex because you can look at a fruit, you can look at a nut, you can look at a plant, but sometimes it's just the leaf or the leaflet of the root or the rhizome. And we don't have the knowledge anymore. I mean, some botanists do, partial knowledge, but it's really the ethnic minorities and some gatekeepers community that have this knowledge. And we need to learn from them. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll ask this question to Rina. Let's try. Why don't we try to ask a question to both Eric and Rina?
Okay.
So, how does edible plants factor into spreading biodiversity and awareness about biodiversity?
Okay, so growing edible plants, especially if we're looking at local plants, and we, of course, will teach children or students or even community groups to grow local, not only because it is something that is native, it's a lot, again, easier to grow. And it's something that people are familiar with as well, and we try to encourage that. In terms of encouraging biodiversity, I think a lot of local trees, they naturally are homes. They are sources of food as well for many local insects and other little creatures as well. And I think it's just about, you know, there's some people who do it now in the cities and go like, I cannot, there's so many insects, they're eating the plants, and this is making me very sad. Like, I'm trying to grow this vegetable and half of it has been decimated by snails or whatever. So again, as I said earlier, natural or nature-friendly pest repellent or I don't even want to use the word insecticide because we don't really think about killing them. We're just trying to repel them as much as possible. But at the same time, if you were to visit our nurseries, none of our plants there are perfect. There's bound to be little holes, little, evidence that it has been used as a buffet some time or other. And I remember this conversation with my mother one time when I brought back some vegetables that were grown by a friend in their farm. And I was telling her, and this was the first time I got vegetables not from a supermarket many, many years ago. And I complained to her and I said, Mom, why are all these vegetables looking so sick? Like they've got holes in it and they don't look so pretty. And my mom said, that's what real vegetables look like. Vegetables that went in a proper farm that also shared space with other things. And it's just evidence that, insects are also eating that too. Just wash it properly and it's the same nutrients, same function, same taste. A lot of times in supermarkets, you're going to get perfect vegetables, and that's because they've been sprayed with God knows what, and it's absolutely perfect. But at the same time, is it better for the environment? Probably not, right? Eric?
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah. That's one of the issues as well is, the chemical and the pesticides, because going back to Vietnam just as a contrast point, in Vietnam, at first sight, you say, this guy eat well, because there's a lot of veggies in their diet, in soup, in all their dishes and so on. But when you have a closer look, it's also one of the problems in Malaysia, because of central agriculture planning, really in the spirit of socialist economies, they do intensive agriculture. So there's a lot of course, chemicals and pesticides. So the Vietnamese eat a lot of veggies, but they eat a lot of chemical compounds as well. And because the knowledge, the cultural capital related to food consumption is very little, it's also one of the issues in Malaysia to an extent, is they think they're okay. Eating a lot of veggies every day, compared to Malaysians where they eat much lesser than, I think they, the 5 suggested different veggies, fruit or veggies per day. I think the latest survey is like Malaysians, we are at 2.3 per day, something like this, But then even if you eat veggies, if you don't pay attention, you're also eating chemicals, not great for your body.
Okay, I got one question for Ceelia. So you're talking about KL having less heat. Can you elaborate a bit more about it? Like, what made KL so special, actually?
I don't think we escaped the climate change impact. I mean, going from food eatable and now suddenly the KL temperature, quite a diverse discussion here. The fact that, the heat is happening in Malaysian cities, what is interesting was that we were not expecting is that temperature is high in Kuala Lumpur, but because of the effective urban greening, the green patches that we kept in the old, city center, that actually helps to cool down the temperature in cities as well. But however, if you compound it by climate change, impact, that it's a global warming, that's going to be, you still see temperatures increase. But because we only look at Kuala Lumpur city centers, just that, area, if you go Greater KL, which is huge area, going towards, other housing areas, Bukit Jalil and so forth, you will see that the temperatures has increased, and that's only in where we are looking at. But it does prove one thing, it's evident that, effective urban greening does cool off cities area between 2 to 8 degrees, which is, reducing the urban heat island effect. We were very encouraged to see this. So out of the 5 areas, this was the outlier finding that we had, yeah.
Yeah, I was actually in Kampung Baru recently, right next to KLCC, and you'd be surprised how much edible plants they actually plant in that area, just, because there's space and people actually need the plants.
Well, I think this now is in the city centers, there's even during MCO, people have taken interest into planting and having flowers and even having gardens, to make the place where they are living more friendly and environmental. I see this boom, even among friends, they were sharing all the flowers they're planting, on WhatsApp and so forth, yeah.
Do you think that there is space for, especially as in Think City, do you think there's space for climate adaptation in our architecture? For example, if you look at Singapore right now, they're doing a lot of green walls and green roofs and all sorts of things like that. Do you think that KL has similar potential?
Oh, definitely. There are many ways of doing urban greening. The common ones are planting street trees, but you can have pocket parks, you can have a green roof, and you also can have a green facade. There are a few, but you need to have the irrigation system to make sure the plants are properly, watered. We even attempted in our office in Penang a green wall. That was a tough one. We planted a whole wall, about how many meters high, fully green. But with if it's not well kept, they can die. And then the buildings behind it had air cons blasting into it, so it was not helping. So then we had to find species that can survive and how you can properly, cool with water and so forth. But it is possible, yeah.
They also say that if you have plants growing next to, very close to, or literally as a green wall or a green roof, it does, of course, also but reduce to the temperature for the building itself. And that means you're also going to reduce the need for power to cool the buildings down. And so overall, it not just looks nice, but it, reduces the carbon footprint of the actual building itself. So hopefully, maintenance is not an easy thing when it comes to these green walls especially. And roofs have been difficult even for us. We have a big problem with heat on our roofs when we get called up to try to start gardens up in roofs. But again, not impossible, but maintenance, and a lot of water is also used as well. So we have to see how we can reduce that, maybe with rainwater harvesting.
There's also the different types. If you're a tree lover, you look at trees, you can see the canopies, the branches. There are certain trees that really helps with shade, but there are those just aesthetically beautiful. There were some of my colleagues, we are looking at streetscape when we are walking. We see the trees, but extremely hot, like the palm trees. It doesn't give you much shade, It's just beautiful to look at, but painfully hot to walk under. So it doesn't really help, yeah. And then we were looking at grass. How does it help? And then my colleague was saying, don't think that the grass will, help to cool off. It just doesn't, it doesn't make it too hot, but maybe neutral, but it doesn't help to reduce temperature. Grass is so small on the patch, yeah.
Yeah, I always think that lawns are just a large amount of wasted space. You could put so much ulam on just one lawn patch.
Yeah, but we were talking about the diet, how we can eat healthier and a lower metabolism, and so forth. It was surprising that we see that Malaysians actually walk lesser than other countries internationally is because of the heat. I think I read one study, Malaysians only managed to walk up to 270 meters before they opt for a car because it's too hot. you would try and there's, no, I'm going to get a Grab. It's too hot.
Most Malaysians won't even walk half that distance.
Yes. I mean, you'll be surprised. And I don't know if you have tried the walkway between Pavilion and KLCC, it's fully air-conditioned. Yeah. That was interesting as well. I was asking, why do you, have a fully air-conditioned? It was they did a study with the pedestrian, and then they said, we wish to have air condition, and they really built one. So, yeah, 90% of the participants, actually said, we want. But using so much energy, one of the side effects of less of urban greening is that you will have food security problem because your plants will die, it's too hot. And then the second one is actually a rise in energy costs. How many % of the houses and the offices are using aircon? Oh, you're just going to go up. That's actually another problem. Yeah.
That's true. Coming back to this on the urban landscape, on the study of these, healthy food deserts, urban sociology, they found out also is one of the variables, not the only one. The other variable is what they call urban furniture, which is, the number of parks, distribution of parks evenly in the city or the suburbs that can incite people to do some sports, especially if you have a little run path and, a bit of permanent fitness equipment and so on. So it's a combination of variables, but in these healthy food deserts, so this I think a study maybe we should do for Malaysia. Because if you don't have a park near your place and all what you have is the air-conditioned skywalk, or if there's no way to walk because there's no sidewalk or it's too hot and so on, of course you take the car. So the environment conditions you not to exercise, and apparently there's, I don't know what's the correlation, but in 2016 there are only 15% of the Malaysian population that exercises regularly. Regularly means three times a week and at least 20 minutes each time. So it's only 15%. So I mean, you must really want it to exercise because you're not induced to.
True. I think as much as Malaysians are food enthusiasts, we can talk about food all the time, but I don't think you see us talking about what kind of exercise we're doing.
Yeah.
I guess this also goes back a bit to infrastructure and design as well of our cities because, for example, I wanted to go to Bukit Kiara on a weekend. I had to spend 20 minutes finding parking.
Correct.
Correct. So, we have less green spaces and, you need a car to get some of these green spaces.
Yeah.
So
we talked about this when we first got here as well. With the traffic jam, you say, it's a lot faster if we actually rode bicycles. And then you think again, wait a minute, are our streets bicycle friendly? Is it pedestrian friendly? Are people is there a demand for pedestrian walkways to really be there for people? Because are people really walking? Again, it goes to what you said. It's too hot. Why is it too hot? Again, climate change, not enough vegetation. So it goes in that one circle. Perhaps if we did try to work towards making it greener, making it friendlier, people will be more motivated to go out. We have seen this. It's not just a pandemic that sent people running into parks and green spaces once the MCOs were lifted, but I think in general, we do have a natural affinity for nature. And I think that if it was made a bit more available, we would be able to take to these things more and hopefully in the process not be 15% of 15% of Malaysians actually exercise. That's a very frightening thought, actually. We've got so many problems as it is.
Maybe it increased after the MCO because maybe.
No, nobody worked on it.
Okay, so I think we're almost out of time here. Let's maybe to end this off. Let's say if you could have something on your wish list for our urban greenery, what would that be? We start with Ceelia.
Yes.
You're asking us?
Yeah.
I actually was curious about our audience who has been sitting so kindly for so long. Maybe they wanted to ask something or say something.
Okay, any questions from the floor? Oh. Do we have a microphone for them?
You can take one of these. There's 4 of it.
Sorry, that was a suggestion from me. I didn't know that it was part of the itinerary or not.
I thought the questions were going to come from the floor as well.
Yeah, I thought so.
But Thary's got some good questions, you know, so.
Okay, I think they're having trouble finding the microphone, so
I'm sure we can hear.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm sure.
it's
I'll
a
just
small
repeat the
hall.
question.
I
Yep.
think you can stand up and just,
Yeah.
speak loudly.
And we can.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh. Yes.
Yeah.
Just come forward, yeah.
Hello. Like this?
Yeah.
Right. I wanted to ask because this is an interesting panel because we've got Mr. Eric who talks about Ulam, and then we've also got Puan Ceelia, which also talks about urban greenery in the city. So I think if we can bridge these ideas together, I was thinking about urban farming in general. So I wanted to know if Think City has any sort of idea on how we can integrate urban farming into the city, maybe plant Ulam Raja in the city itself, and not just make it like a simple one single project where we just have it on Pasar Seni and just have those plants, but make it integrated into our lifestyle, into our neighborhoods where we can collect Ulam Raja and then we can eat it at home, beli daripada market macam tu. So I just wanted to know if Think City has any ideas on how we can integrate urban farming into our lifestyles. Thank you.
We have tried out a few approach. The most recent one that we have successfully received the fund is for Penang. Planting a number of trees in Georgetown and Bayan Lepas to cool off. But of course in Georgetown, the old streets are so tight and narrow. If you go to Georgetown, it's just 2 laneways. Where are you going to find space to plant a tree? And then you can't, obstruct the facade. And they are all heritage buildings. They're shop houses. But there is a way to plant the trees by a certain distance and also a certain tree species for that area. So we have a program for that. We have an idea for that. And then another one is we also had a collaboration with YWCA. As a group of young women, and they had a plot of land, and we converted it into urban farming. They have a program to equip young women with skills like culinary and sewing and so forth. But then, what about the raw materials for cooking? So then we converted that urban farming together with YWCA to teach them how to plant, how to maintain, and then harvest, and then use it for their kitchen. That was one of the programs. And then another one that we had was trying urban farming, different types on the roof, and then some different strategies of cooling. But of course, you can't farm on the facade. But we had another approach as well on that one. We also did a pocket park to just have a patch converted, a cooler, and also sidewalks to put some plants as well and discuss with the shop owner. What if you convert this corner into, planting some plants and having some greens? And that also we have done it as well. So there were a few approaches, and the challenge is actually maintaining and keeping those plants alive. Plenty of irrigation and, making sure they're well kept and so forth. So that's another challenge, yeah. I hope that answers you.
Okay.
Yes, sure.
I think we have time for one more question. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, just to repeat the question for viewers online. So she was asking whether different species of trees have different cooling potential, and also whether there is any cooperation with government bodies or any of our efforts. Okay.
We definitely collaborate with a city council. It is a huge challenge because there are many different departments, and to have the meetings and layers of organizations and approval, it's challenging. However, for the program that we have in Penang, we involve the local council of Penang Island and also the irrigation department, because they play a big role in the infrastructure. And then we may plant this idea and initiate together with them to get the funds, but who is actually, the advocates or the people who take care of the cities are the local authorities. However, also we advocate to experts and also to the community. For us, in the end, climate change impacts everyone, and everyone should be a player. Instead of pointing fingers, who do more, who do less. But in the end, it is coming upon us, and everyone has to, do something. So that's another one that we did as well. As for the tree species, whether they have a different opportunity or different potential to cool, it depends also. There is differences, but I'm not an expert. But we did find out that depending, for example, we were looking at one palm trees and then a tree with big canopies and many leaves gives different shade and so forth. That I know has a different, potential itself. And what was worrying us is that you can see even like when ice is melting in Iceland and other countries, even their climate and their soil and the plantation is all changing. So what will survive by 2050 in Malaysia is not the tree that cannot stand the heat at that time. It has to be a resilient street trees. And we are even, our team is also in contact with the botanists even in Singapore. They're observing all the species that they were planting, how it's being impacted by the environment and also the climate itself. Whether they can survive is very important. You may plant a tree that very well survive now. It may not necessarily be resilient in time to come. Temperature will increase. So we have embarked and we work with the landscape department. Although it's how do you call it? It should be with the local authorities, but we wanted to initiate this and drive and then give the entire database of 215 trees together with 7 experts we have compiled, and then give it to the landscape department so that they can share with the entire country, because trees has ecosystem. You can't plant a single species that's right for KL into Ippo and Penang. There is ecosystem, there is we humans live with an environment with animals and plants. There's pollinating and the different species that survive. If you plant a certain dominant species, it will change everything there. The birds, the animals, the insects. Every area is unique. So that's also very important.
Correct. I mean, even for us, and we do work, we're a non-governmental organization, obviously, but for some activities, we do have government agencies come to us. City council loves to come to us and ask us for our trees, so we take them to our forest nursery as well. We try to push the local species out. It's quite common that we see in landscaping, especially around the city, non-native species being used. So when they do come to us, we like, okay, this, we're growing all native species. Please take these trees from us, and put them all over the city or in your parks and things like that. But yeah, in terms of like them giving us support in other ways like money or whatever, not really. But we do go to them and we try to push our trees and what we would like to see on them. We do get support in a sense of like they help us engage with local communities for setting up edible gardens, or setting up greening, more greens to be planted here and there. So it has been all right. However, we also try to stay independent, because then we have more control of what we do, especially when it comes to engaging with communities and schools and all that.
I think,
Okay.
if I may, just to complement, we have a bit the same approach for the Ulam school. We try, in a way, to preserve a bit of independence, at least at the start, and also to legitimate the project, we have the support from external sources, international. So one was Toyota Foundation, and lately it's UNESCO. Also give us kind of a bit of label and legitimacy there. And once you know what's in stamp externally, after a while it's a bit easier to push the message across to the government. But because what we do, we see ourselves like informal education. We don't want to substitute to the National Nutrition Plan of Malaysia, because they're doing also a good job there, but if you look at the statistics, is not enough. So we are trying just a complemental approach, which is informal education, and hopefully user-friendly and very accessible to create just another pathway. So that's also important to preserve our independence as well. Yeah.
Okay, I think that's all the time we have for today. So if any of the audience still have any questions, you can ask us later. You can just approach us and ask us later. So I'd like to thank all our guests for really interesting talks and answering a lot of questions. So I think before we go, anyone wants to plug their website, social media? Or
You can go first, Ceelia.
Sorry?
you have a Think City Instagram or something.
I thought you were going to ask me to do a TikTok, but...
No.
I can record you right now.
No, I didn't have that in mind. I thought all this will naturally goes to the social media,
okay.
And then when you hashtag or add our company, everybody will be seeing. Yeah. Nothing too fancy. Sorry, Thary.
Okay. Well, for us from Free Tree Society, of course, we live up to our name, and we're about free trees as well. So again, if you are looking to rewild your green spaces, be it your balcony, a windowsill, your garden, or even a communal space like a school or a park, please come to us, and we will definitely help you out. As individuals, we give you free trees each, but we can also set up fruit trees for communities and vegetables and all that. So please come and reach out to us if you're interested. We're more than happy to help you.
Okay. For me, I give a rendezvous in April when we start our brandly new website with the learning management system with a few online short courses. Or in the meantime, if you want to have an idea, we also have a bit of information on our UNESCO Chair website. So UNESCO Chair, you Google it, you find out. And we have also some conferences where I can invite all my three colleagues here. One is organized by UNESCO, UNESCO at UCAM, our UNESCO Chair. It's a nice place. It's in Miri in June. So if you want to go to Sarawak, very, very cool place. And we have booked a hotel near the river there. And so we have our first conference. And there will be a panel on food and social justice. And there's a second conference end of October during the Toussaint holidays for the French education system. And this one is also in Sarawak, but a different city, Kuching. And this one is really on Makanan, is on food and society. And there will be a lot of action there. There will be a chef demonstration. There will be a talk, round tables. We'll be going to the market. We'll be manipulating and eating ulam as well, including specific ulam of Sarawak, which is beautiful. So that can be a way to have a feel of the state of affairs and the state of knowledge, and the big stakeholders also in terms of sustainable food and nutrition will be there as well. So that's it for me.
So Thary, I think inspired by two of them, I have a little bit to say now. I have all my thoughts in my mind. I think what will be a great takeaway is that it's not only about climate. Our work in Think City, it's in placemaking, means building a sense of identity and community. And then second is also in social resilience, which is on the vulnerable community. I myself have looked at safety of public spaces for women and also people with disability. It's more than what you see here. Also, we look at low-cost housing and the welfare of people. And one of them is a climate resilience. Also now you are seeing what we are presenting today. And another aspect of our work is culture. Now myself, I'm leading the culture portfolio, is how to use our culture, our heritage, being built environment or even museology, archaeological sites and so forth, and also our craftsmen and artisan into building the local economy again after we have been impacted by pandemic. So it's all about culture of an area, which is a strong identity and assets of the people of that place that need to be amplified and supported. So these are many initiatives that we have. Come to Think City. We have Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and join our activities and be a support. Thanks.
Okay, with that, I wish you all a very good night, and I thank our guest speakers for a really, really interesting talk. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.